We begin in South Korea, where a week of national mourning has been declared after the deadliest aviation accident in decades. Nearly all of the 181 passengers and crew aboard the Jeju Air flight arriving from Bangkok were killed. The Boeing 737-800 skidded off the runway at Muan International Airport and burst into flames. 2 crew members who were rescued from the tail section are the only known survivors. Health officials said both are hospitalized. Their injuries are said not to be life-threatening.
This is the moment the Jeju airplane skids down the runway at Muan Airport in South Korea before crashing into a wall and bursting into flames. Emergency services are working into the night, searching the wreckage. The fire department say the plane was almost completely destroyed in the blaze, and identifying the deceased is proving difficult. Jeju Air quickly issued an apology, saying they are doing all they can to respond to the incident.
I would like to bow my head and apologise to all those who cherished Jeju Air. Above all, I would like to express my deepest condolences and apologies to the passengers and their families who lost their lives in this accident.
South Korea's acting president, Choi Sang-mok, arrived in Muan on Sunday afternoon. He pledged that all necessary government resources would be available. For the families of those on board, it's an anxious wait for the worst possible news.
Journalist Jen Moon joins us now on the phone from the crash site. Jen, what's the latest from where you are?
Right, I'm here at Muan International Airport in South Cholla Province, about 290 kilometers southwest of the South Korean capital. It's been 13 hours since the deadly plane crash, and authorities have confirmed all 179 people dead of the 181 people on board. 2 were rescued earlier in the day, and all 179 people have been confirmed dead at this point. This means that officials have confirmed that all of the plane's 175 passengers were killed in the crash, along with 4 flight staff. They have identified 65 of the 179 dead. The 2 survivors are crew members of Jeju Air, and these crew members, 1 female and 1 male in their 20s, were rescued from the tail of the aircraft. And authorities here say they have suffered mid to severe injuries. They have now been sent to hospitals in the capital, Seoul, and each one of them are at the Asan Hospital and the other at Muan University Hospital. The tragedy is breaking the hearts of many in the country, as many of these passengers were families who were away on a Christmas vacation and returning back from about a 5-day-long Christmas vacation in Thailand. And there were children there, and many of them were families. So it's a really heartbreaking scene here at the airport.
As you've said, the 2 crew members survived this. Do we have any more details about how they were rescued?
Nothing but just the fact that they were rescued from the tail end of the aircraft. Now, if we look at the debris of the aircraft, just the tail bit remains, retains the shape, and the rest of it is gone in an explosion. So the 2 at the very end of the flight, so the tail end of the airplane, were rescued. So that's all we know for now, but we will be finding out more in the next days and weeks to come.
Now, we know that many of the affected families are at the airport. How are they being assisted?
I've been speaking to the bereaved families of the passengers who had been on board the crashed airplane, and heartbreaking scenes continue to unfold here at Muan International Airport. Now, more than 100 family members have gathered in a meeting room here to receive updates about their loved ones. All day long, the room continued to erupt in wails of grief as families learned of the death of their loved ones. The bodies of the recovered are currently being housed in a temporary mortuary close to the crash site. I've been speaking to one elderly couple who lost their son, daughter-in-law, and grandchild all in the crash. Another lady passed out after learning that her two children on board the aircraft had passed away in this crash. So all a very difficult scene. Government authorities have said that they will give all-out efforts to assist these bereaved families. They will support them in their funeral procedures. Those families who would like to travel down here to the southwestern side of the country will be given railway services by Korea Rail. And the president, the acting president, has declared the scene a special disaster zone, which means all administrative, fiscal, and budgetary measures will be given as a priority here to the bereaved families and this region of Muan.
South Korea is going through difficult times politically at the moment. How have South Koreans been reacting to this tragedy?
Devastation would be the word to describe the mood and the psyche here in South Korea. Of course, it is undergoing a political turmoil after the impeachment of the president, and followed by the impeachment of the acting president, who was the prime minister of this country, and now the deputy prime minister and finance minister Choi Sang-mok is in control as the acting president. He was named that on Friday, so it's only been 2 days. So this is a 2-day-old acting president who is trying to take control of this biggest aviation accident in the nation's history.
We know authorities are investigating the cause of the crash. Have they been saying anything about when we can expect to know anything more?
No, so authorities have been scrambling to get their hands on the voice recorder and the black box. They have recovered those. However, we're just learning that there was some wreckage found in the black box, which would have shown the accident, the follow-ups to the accident. So we'll have to wait and see. But under global aviation rules, South Korea will lead a civil investigation into the crash, and which will automatically involve the National Transportation Safety Board in the United States, where the plane was designed and built. Experts say that this may take months and even a year before finding out the exact cause of this accident.
Thank you very much. That's Jen Moon. They're reporting from Muan International Airport in South Korea. Now let's get some more on this from aviation journalist Andreas Speth. He joins us from Hamburg. Andreas, thank you for being with us. Now, the plane appeared to be attempting a belly landing without its landing gear extended. What could have led to this, in your opinion?
So we have to look at the entire sequence of things happening, and it seems that there have been some videos being published online in social media that we can actually see. Before the initial landing attempt, there was a bird strike. So before we see the video that we now all see on TV and in social media, there was a bird strike happening. So the aircraft, there was even a bird strike warning given out by the airport. And in the end, the aircraft was actually hit by birds, apparently. So there's some video footage listings showing that. And that led to the first landing attempt being aborted by the aircraft. And then the pilots took off again, trying to do another approach. And we see, if we look at the flight data, that they did a so-called teardrop movement, meaning they were immediately circling and trying to fly into the opposite direction and land right away. So they did not do a whole entire circle and land from the same direction again, but from the opposite direction, which was much closer. And that indicates, I just talked to a pilot who flew the 737-800 in Korea himself, and he told me that this maneuver indicates, it's kind of a desperate maneuver, that there was apparently no more or limited engine power available. So that actually points towards some damage in the engines from the previous bird strike. But in a go-around maneuver, pilots are normally retracting the landing gear. Apparently the gear was out on the first attempt, but in the second attempt that we now see on this tragic video, the aircraft landing gear was not extended, so that actually made the thing much, much worse. So we see the aircraft sliding across the runway at full speed. So apparently it didn't have any braking action here. So there were no rudders, no flaps, no reverse thrust, and also no gear brakes because there was no gear extended. So we see the aircraft on its belly here in a very high speed. So it overshot the end of the runway and then hit obstacles at the end of the runway and burst into flames, as we see here, tragically.
So let me just get this clear. Are you saying that the bird strike could have impacted the landing gear, or is that a separate issue?
No, it was finally probably a crew error under immense pressure, because the bird strike most probably, and that's the case usually in bird strikes, affected the engine's power. So after going around and taking off again, and did not execute the landing at the first attempt, he tried to go around and try another landing attempt, and then apparently there was only limited power available to the aircraft. It's not sure if there was any thrust in the engines left. And from previous videos we've seen on social media, it seems that engines were harmed in the first initial bird strike. It's not clear if one or two engines were harmed. There was even some flame seen coming from one of the engines initially. So this maneuver was kind of desperate of trying to do this teardrop maneuver, and that indeed then was probably a crew error, or maybe it was also a hydraulic error, that the engine, the gear was not extended the second time, but it was not extended, as we can see, and that actually made things much worse. So there is kind of a connection which is not entirely clear, the entire connection, how in detail it worked out. But a kind of a result of the initial bird strike was the final fact that the gear wasn't extended.
Now, the plane crashed into a wall at the end of the runway. Is it usual to have these kinds of barriers near the runway?
No, it's not, and it's very worrying to see that. We call this overrun area, and normally safe airports should be constructed like that there's an ample overrun area. If an aircraft inadvertently leaves the runway, there should be ample space for it to come to a halt even outside the runway. And here we see on the video, right after it left the concrete path of the runway, when it ended, it crashed into this obstacle almost immediately and burst into flames. So the proximity of these obstacles to the end of the runway is really a big problem, and some airports have that. The pilot I talked to told me if the pilots on this aircraft of Jeju Air still had some better engine power available, they might have diverted the aircraft to nearby Jeju Airport, which has much better facilities in different ways, and would have been much easier even for this partially crippled aircraft to do a safe landing.
Now, the flight data recorder and the voice recorder have been retrieved, we know. What kind of information will we get once investigators have inspected those?
Yeah, we can see, and that's a bizarre parallel to the air crash we've seen earlier this week in Kazakhstan. So the same part of the aircraft at that crash and at today's crash has been preserved, which is the tail section, which is positive in the way that that's where the aircraft recorders are located. So I assume that the recorders will be fairly unharmed. So it should be fairly easy technically to kind of read out the available data, and there's ample data being recorded in these things. And so I think the main information we need is what happened technically to the aircraft's performance after the initial bird strike. And so how much engine power was available? Was there still hydraulics? Why wasn't the gear extended? All these questions hopefully might be answered by the data we should see coming from the recorders very soon, hopefully.
Thank you very much. That's aviation journalist Andreas Speth joining us from Hamburg. Thanks for your analysis.